Welcome back to another episode of Singapore's Real Estate Explained, brought to you by the JNE Investments team. And today we're on our myth-busting series.
Yes.
Which myth will we bust today?
Okay, so today, I would say it's one of the biggest topic. Whether it's a myth or not, we will see it later.
Yes.
But I think it's definitely something that's unique to all Singapore properties because no other countries have MRT line.
Yep.
So with all our MRT lines,
just they're not called MRT.
They're not called MRT. But I think because Singapore is such a small country, I think the accessibility part, I think MRT to everyone, it plays a lot of plays a big factor lah.
Yep.
So a lot of people say properties near MRT confirm will make more. Is it really true? We will dive deeper later.
But before we start, we just want to thank all of you that actually reached out to us.
Yes.
So many of you actually reached out to us to say, hey, we've seen your videos. We thought it was really helpful. I don't know where I'm going to start. I'm looking at first property, but I don't know where to start. Or like a lot of you are holding on to properties. Some of you are stuck in one betas and say, can you just help me? And we've been very excited to speak to you guys. So if you're someone in that position, do feel free to scan a QR code over here, and we'll be happy to get someone to speak to you from the investment team. Or if you are currently considering like two options and you don't know which one to go for, feel free to also reach out to us, and we'll be happy to share with you our second opinion.
Yes.
Completely free. So some of you reached out to us and say, hey, why are you doing this?
Why are you doing this for free? What's in it for you?
Yeah, what's in it for you? And there are cases where we didn't manage to transact with that client this particular time, but they felt like they really enjoyed the process working with us, and they've actually shared us with their friends and family. And I guess we're always in this for the long run, where we hope to bring you value, so that eventually, maybe not this time around, but maybe next time we get to work together also.
Yes.
So feel free to reach out to us. We're not scary people, and we'll be happy to speak to you also. Okay?
Yeah.
So let's go on with whether properties near MRT will actually profit more.
Correct. Okay, so I think number one thing we want to talk about is definitely what are the market thoughts lah. What is everybody talking about MRT, right? Everyone is kind of like a bread and butter.
The common one. What's
parcel.
the uncle, auntie gonna say when you meet them? Like
buy
if you
house
tell them.
must buy near MRT. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll take a look at what are some of these market thoughts that we have. So we have actually different schools of thoughts actually. Quite interesting. So we have one that says MRT confirm guaranteed higher value. Most important, whatever property you see, is location and near MRT.
Don't get somewhere like Changi, Jurong or Yishun.
Yeah. It's okay to pay more for higher floor and location.
Let
right?
us know what you think.
That's what I think. Write down in the comments below. Okay. Second, near MRT, confirm easier to rent and sell.
Yeah.
Right. So resale value, rentability, if your kids don't drive, I think this is obvious why people will want to buy near MRT lah, right? This is one of the another school of thoughts as well. Of course, some people would also be a bit more like numbers driven, data driven. Yeah, they say MRT most probably is already priced in already. Easily a two-bedder will be easily a two-bedder that is next to MRT could be a 3-bed price for maybe somewhere that is like 5 minutes walk away. It could even be that kind of
And this
premium.
was so cool. You all know how expensive near MRT is to fulfill the condo dream, buy away from MRT.
So for them, it's like MRT premium is already priced in.
Two very separate teams in the market.
Yeah, and then there's also one that is a little bit more, I guess, objective. MRT or not, the key ultimately is still entry price, right? So we are not big to pay like few millions more just for a near premium, near CBD, near MRT kind. So property really is to study the entry price.
And I guess this is really what we're anchoring today, because logically, if you ask anybody, will you pay like 2 million or 1 million more for MRT, they'll say no. So actually the key is not whether you have MRT. I think the key today we'll be touching on is like, if you want to buy MRT, how much more it's a safe premium to buy. It's like when you consider second-hand versus brand new, right? People always like, whether it's a car or not, they'll calculate to say, okay, for a new one, how much more is it worth it? And then if I can buy under that value that another person would pay, then it makes sense to go for near the MRT, or it makes sense to go for something new.
Correct.
But if the difference is very significant, then maybe you want to consider something further out.
Yes.
So we're here to give you the number, so stay tuned in the end, and it will give you a benchmark when you are looking for properties and moving forward, whether or not there is MRT.
Yes, correct. I think that's the key lah. We want to take a look at what is the entry, whether is there still price, is there still growth potential, even if it's whether near MRT or not MRT. Yeah. That's the key. Okay. So some caveats for the analysis. So we focus only on private condos. So no HDB, no ECs. That's a different ballgame altogether. So developments minimally 250 lah. So we don't look at things like your boutique developments kind of thing. Then of course the developments must have similar launch years. We cannot have one that is like 10 years apart. It will be very different, right? Same tenure, 99 years, comparison against all three bidders. And then we try our very best to keep the key variable just between the walking distance to nearest MRT. But of course, for Singapore property itself, I think we can't really just look at it based on one point of view. There's a lot of other things that we have to look at. So we try to eliminate as much as possible, but we'll share later in our examples what are some of the other caveats.
Okay, so first case studies we'll look at is your hometown.
My current hometown, Punggol. So these are the places that I see almost every day. Every time I walk my dog, I'll see River Isles, and then I'll go to Waterway Point, and then Watertown is there. Okay, so now I'm comparing Watertown versus River Isles. Watertown, for people who are not familiar in Punggol, Watertown is basically the integrated condo right above Waterway Point. Okay, River Isles is all the way down here. So the unique thing about River Isles is it's not even near LRT. So LRT is on this line, and on this line, River Isles is in the middle. But that said, the advantage that you have is about 4 bus stops away to Watertown only. Okay, so distance is quite a distance, not so walkable as well. So we also then want to see, okay, given the distance, then what is the PSF growth comparing Watertown and River Isles? And surprisingly, we are actually seeing River Isles having a steadier growth as compared to Watertown, right? So at the start, they had quite a big gap. But then over the period of next 5 years, right, we actually see River Isles outperforming Watertown a little bit. And then also just to share a little bit of background, during this period of 2012-2013, it's also when TDSR, the cooling measure, total debt servicing ratio, that whole cooling measure was announced. And that's why you see a little bit of dip on the Watertown side. But then you don't really see on River Isles, because I think in terms of what TDSR affected was more about affordability. But for River Isles, given their quantum back then, I think it was still within a comfortable affordability range. That's why their price didn't really move much. Okay, so then this is the profitability that we are looking in terms of Watertown and River Isles. I would say it's not too much of a difference. Of course,
similar.
Yeah, it's quite similar. 200k. Of course, you see more of 100k over here. And then on River Isles side, essentially, you can also see gains of 200k, 150, and then of course the rest
some lower also.
But the key thing here is, right, if you notice, right, the down payment part or the equity that you put into River Isles and Watertown is very different. So can you imagine you're putting, say for example, you're paying 800k for a 3-bedder, but you gain about 200k, rather than paying Watertown, you pay 1.2 million for a 3-bedder, you are also earning about 200k, right? So in terms of when it comes to investment, we also want to look at the return on equity. How much equity you put in, what is the gains you get. And then the other thing we also want to take a look is, okay, let's say back then I had 1.2 million. River Isles, can I buy something else? Actually, you can. You can buy a 4-bedder over here, same price. And then you can also see, so essentially, this is a case of, again, like one of the market sentiments, right? If you can buy a bigger unit with the same quantum that is near MRT, that would give you a better position. You will also then start to see profits that are quite similar already in that sense. 200 plus K, 100 over K as well. So again, sometimes the comparison that you have between comparing a MRT and not near MRT property, sometimes it could be a difference between 4-bedder or
2 and a 3 or a 3 and a 4.
Correct. We will cover a little bit more later on some of the examples that we have found also. And then if you take a look at the comparison with a 4-bedder, same quantum that you are going in, you are actually seeing a better kind of like PSF growth for 4-bedder as well. Okay, so this is the PSF growth part. Of course, when it comes to MRT, some people say easier to rent, right? So let's take a look at the rental yield itself.
And I guess for MRT wise, this is something a lot of people look at, right? That it's easier to rent.
Higher rental.
Probably higher rental, yes. But when we calculate for investment, we always want to see what is our gross rental yield. And how that is usually calculated as you take whatever rental you're collecting per month, multiply by 12, which is to calculate a year annual rental, and then divide it by the property price. So you will see for Watertown versus River Isles, if you take a 3-bedder, for example, a 2.2 million property price at Watertown, you could rent out for about 5,003. At River Isles, your quantum is slightly lower, but because you don't have MRT, right, so you can only rent it out slightly lower at 4,000. And if you really do the sums, for Watertown, even though you can rent it slightly higher, but because your purchase price is higher, your gross rental yield is about 2.84% versus River Isles at 3.14%.
Yeah.
So in a way, people usually we don't recommend buying for rental, but if someone is looking at passive income and you're retiree, usually people will find something that have higher rental yield, means I have lesser money locked in, but I get the better passive income over
Yes,
time.
correct. Because if you look at the difference in the price is about 700k. The question then is, if you have that 700k more, down payment maybe about 200 plus k.
Yeah.
Can that 200 plus k be put into another maybe
Investment.
dividend or something to give you another source of passive income?
Or it could be a partner's like another part of the down payment of like maybe your partner's property
Correct.
also.
Then rather than putting all into one property, what is another thing that could help you support your retirement? I think that's something you want to look at. Also, the other thing that people talk about near MRT is that it's easier to sell, confirm more transaction. So we look at the past 5 years. Actually, if you take a look at it, right, the total number of transactions for 3-bedder in Watertown was only about 40. River House is about 100. So is it really true that near MRT confirm easier to sell or can see more transactions? Not necessarily.
Yes.
But we also want to see what is the transaction volume there lah. What is like the available unit? Because sometimes people will say, oh, Watertown cost not many but selling.
Yep.
But not necessarily. You will see 3 beds. Okay, there's about 7 units here. Here about 12 units. So the difference actually is not too much of a difference.
And I guess maybe one reason why River Isle, the volume is a bit higher is also because for properties that are not near the MRT, especially when you're in OCR, people are a bit more price sensitive as compared to when you go into RCR or like CCR, right? The buyer profiles are very different. For families like this, they tend to value space over, let's say, convenience, because maybe the difference they can actually buy a car.
Yes.
And if you're in that home for like some time, right, to them, like the space is a lot more important than like maybe getting an extra room, but maybe it takes me like 5 to 10 minutes, let's say, bus ride to the MRT.
Correct. Yeah, and the thing is, again, right, we go back to 2.1 million budget in Watertown now. Could I get a river out somewhere with 4-bedder? For families who are looking for space, then this is something that they will consider.
Yep.
Right? Okay, then this is the floor plan that we have looked at for Watertown, 3-bed, 2-bath. So I would say quite similar in that sense. Both has utility and yard. And then for River House also, they have utility yard and including a WC also.
The Watertown like bedroom 3 seems a little bit smaller as
Bedroom
compared
2
to...
also seems a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
But 1119 versus 1066, I'm pretty sure the biggest difference is the balcony. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So in terms of floor plan, I would say not too much of a difference. Livable space, maybe River Isle will be slightly better.
So looking at the MRT premium per square feet gap, if you were to look at like the bigger 3-bedder, at launch the per square feet the difference was about 314, and then after that, today or rather last year, it actually widened to about 374. So absolute gap wise actually increased. For total price, MRT premium at launch was close to about 400 and actually increased to about 500k. So this was something quite surprising. I mean, this is one area that we're looking at. Later we'll look at a few areas to see whether this gap is consistent across. But I would say between River Isle and Watertown, the gap was higher than a few other examples that we actually saw. Okay, so in absolute terms, actually, for here, the gap increased for the projects that were near MRT. But percentage-wise, when we calculated, the one at River Isle actually did better.
Yeah, so the gap, in terms of percentage-wise, it actually narrowed because ultimately in 2025, they are still paying a higher amount. So if you put it against percentage-wise, actually it narrowed, surprisingly.
Okay. So looking at an overview, you would see that per square feet gain for River Isles was slightly higher as compared to like Watertown, because not Watertown, the base was, or rather they put in a little bit more money, right? And rental yield for River Isles was also higher. Transaction volume for River Isles was also higher in this case.
Yeah. So in terms of this case, like in terms Watertown might not be the... Like not say it's not a very, very clear winner comparing Watertown and River Isles. All these factors that everybody talks about, having an MRT or not near MRT, actually River Isles still kind of like outperform a little bit in terms of that.
In terms of like, if you're talking about return on equity and the amount that you put in.
Yes.
But for own-stay people, doesn't mean that Watertown dynamic actually still did pretty well.
Not too bad.
Which also means that it really depends on what your needs are. Whether, you would prefer something with MRT and you don't mind paying a little bit more with maybe even potentially earning the same profit as River Isle. It's just that at the start, your input may be a bit higher.
Yes, correct. Okay. So with that, we talk about our next example. So this is more towards the central area, like Bishan, City Fringe area. We have Skyview versus Thomson Tree. So looking at the location, Skyview is near Bishan itself. Thomson Tree is quite far out. And when they launch, Bright Hill Upper Thomson, all this, the brown line is still not out yet back then. Okay, so now we want to take a look at what is their capital appreciation in terms of PSF growth. So you can see this is a very clear example, right? Near MRT and not near MRT, actually their PSF launch was quite similar.
1,003 and 1,323 and 1,379.
Yeah, 1,323 and then 1,323 and 1,379. So not too far of a difference, which is something very interesting. And of course, if you have such opportunities, this is something you want to look at as well. But then surprisingly, you also see actually Thomson 3 grew about 19% compared to Skyview, which was about 12%. So this was something that was quite surprising for
why
us
did
also.
the one with MRT price so closely to the one with no MRT but still didn't outperform?
Yes, correct. Okay, so then when we take a look at the profitability wise, you can see actually again it's not too much of a difference. Skyview, we are seeing profits about 200 plus all the way to 100 plus, and then Thomson 3 same thing also about 200 plus K 100. So does it mean the MRT confirm will make a lot more? Actually, really not necessarily.
We'll let you know what's the problem with Skyview later on.
Correct. Okay. And then same thing, we look at rental yield as well for the same amount that you are for a higher amount or same amount that you are putting in. For Skyview, let's say in the past 2 years, average transaction was about 2.6 mil for a 3-bed. You can command a high rent of about 5.8K.
Yeah.
But then for Thomson 3, maybe you put in about 2.4 mil. Your rental, not too bad actually, about 5.1 for a 3-bedder.
Yes. But this one wouldn't be the most accurately because at that time when we actually took the rental, the MRT would have already been up for both Thomson 3 as well as Skyview.
Correct. But again, that's it. Thomson 3 is still in between two MRTs. It's not like Skyview, which is right next to Bishan. Right? So you can also see that actually, in this case, Skyview actually made a little bit more in terms of the rental itself. And then for Thomson 3, made slightly lesser. But again, I would say this difference is not too much. It's not like
not
a 2 to 3%.
significant.
Not very significant. So quite similar actually as well. Okay, same thing. We look at transaction volumes. For Skyview, past 5 years, you see 28 transactions. For Thomson 3, you see about 51. So again, does it mean that near MRT confirm a lot more transactions? Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, yeah.
Okay, so this is the floor plan. Come, Grace.
Yeah, so maybe you guys can also know, right? Like why that Skyview as an MRT launched, so closely to Thomson 3 and they still didn't outperform. I think like what we mentioned is that layout is very important. And if you were to look at Skyview, even though they were 1141, their rooms are quite small. Like their common rooms can only fit a single science bed. And that is a problem that we are facing today for buyers that are looking at the market. Just to note, right, in terms of ease of exit, try to find a unit that the bedroom can at least fit a queen size bed, because if it can't, when it comes to like selling in the future, you're going to face a lot of like problems, a lot of issues in exiting. And that's why you will see Thomson 3-bed, 3-bath, the layout is more effective in a way that my room size are at least all of them can fit a queen size bed, even though I may not have like a walk-in closet as compared to Skyview. But the people is like, okay, besides a walk-in closet, I actually want my rooms to be more effective.
Bigger, yes. Yes. Correct. Okay, especially if you are looking at family who are looking to buy, and then the thing is, if your competitors are all providing like bigger bedrooms, I think that's one of the key issue in terms of competition that you have fight for Skyview itself.
So looking at an overview, Thomson 3 actually outperformed in terms of per square feet gain at 19%. Rental yield-wise, quite similar, not much difference. And transaction volume-wise, Thomson 3 had about 51 transactions in the last 5 years as compared to Skyview of 28.
Okay. Then let's talk about the MRT premium gap itself. So for Skyview, because they were priced so closely to each other, with basically a better location and not so good location, they were actually almost at the same price. So while they have the layout issues, they were still able to kind of like perform a little bit more, right? So you see at the start, the PSF launch was about $28 in terms of the difference. In 2025, the gap actually widened to about $200. And then premium-wise, at the launch was about 32K difference. Right now in 2025, the gap is actually increased to about 250. So people are willing to pay 250 more just for a Bishan MRT versus maybe the closest MRT to Thomson 3 now is about it's like Upper Thomson, maybe also about a 8 minutes, 10 minutes walk kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. So the last example we have, Park Colonial versus the Trevor.
Yep. Okay. So looking at both, Trevor is going to be the one that you can't walk to the MRT, and Park Colonial is the one that you can. And both TOP around the same period of 2021 to 2022. Looking at their launch pricings, not too much of a difference. I would say slight difference. Park Colonial was about 1,683 and Trevor was around 1,005 plus. And in 2022, Park Colonial was about 1,969 and Trevor was around 1,008. And both their growth were quite similar, between about 16 to 17%.
Correct. And the unique thing about Park Colonial versus the Trevor was that this, in terms of the price-wise, right, you are actually seeing Park Colonial, which is right next to MRT, selling cheaper than the Trevor, which is away. Yeah, so this is the key thing that we notice. What we are trying to pick out is that if we have a location, we have something that is nearer to MRT and further to MRT, but it's actually the same price, or even the one near MRT that is cheaper, what would be the growth like for them?
Yeah. So looking at profitability, I think both Park Colonial and Trevor were quite similar. So their profit for 3 betas were around 400 to let's say 500 or even up to 600 for Trevor.
Yep.
And some people may then question, say, how come like Park Colonial near MRT was launched quite similar to Trevor prices but didn't kind of outperform?
Yep.
One thing to also note, like Trevor had a special unique point that it actually had like a, people can say like river facing lah.
Yeah.
Okay, so they did have that special unique point. But it also meant that, Park Colonial with the MRT side, it was a little bit of a safety buffer because they entered around the same price as Trevor, having that connectivity. So I think if you're buying near the MRT and you know that somewhere further out has already kind of set a benchmark and you're entering slightly, just slightly above them, usually the exit will be a lot easier because you didn't like overpay for that kind of premium.
Yeah. So this is also something that we want to say, we mentioned earlier also. While as much as we want to keep the difference as just MRT, again, there are certain different
factors.
Different factors lah, like Skyview just got layout, Trevor has a view, so on and so forth.
Correct.
But we can see actually, again, does MRT really outperform other properties? This is really something we still have to look at the numbers itself.
So rental yield wise, both are similar for Park Colonial and Trevor at 3+%. Both have their plus, right? One have a better view, one have an MRT. So it really depends on what people actually prioritize, whether it's the connectivity or whether it's something that they look at every single day lah.
Yes, correct. Okay. Yeah, so for transaction volumes, then you can see actually for this case, you will see Park Colonial having more transactions than the Trevor. So for them, it's slightly different than the two other case studies. This is where you can see with MRT, there was a bit more transaction volumes lah.
Yeah. So layout wise for both, quite similar, I would say. Last time they really like to have like a balcony in the in a master bedroom.
Yep.
I think everybody complains it's like a waste of space because nobody really sits down there and it's so small to actually do anything. Room size, they were quite similar. Living, dining, I would say quite comparable for both also. Okay, so if you look at the premium per square feet, back when they first launched versus today, back then the gap wasn't very significant. Per square feet wise, it was about 129. And in 2025, last year, the gap widened to about 387. So people saw at the start when you're not paying it that much, right? And upon TOP or in today's market, when people actually really value MRT, that's when you see the gap widen. How much people actually pay in pricing at the start was about 76k more for Park Colonial, and today Park Colonial, it's about 312k more expensive.
Yes.
So we've kind of seen the ranges from people paying 500k in like Punggol to, let's say, in here people are paying about 300k higher.
Correct. Okay, so as an overview for this one, slightly different than the other two case studies, this is where we see Park Colonial actually outperform the Trevor. PSF gain about 17%, rental yield 3.35%, and then transaction volumes higher as well. So I think this is really the case where you have a place property with a better location entering similar pricing as somewhere that is further out away, albeit there's all the view and everything. The pricing point still makes sense lah. That's why they could perform. Okay. And then this is an overview. Very quickly, just run through. Case study 1, we can see actually River Isles outperform in terms of the capital gain and rental. For case study 2 itself, capital gain for Thomson 3, actually they are the winner, and then rental Skyview is slightly more, only not too much of a difference, 0.something% lah. And then case study 3, we can see Park Colonial is a clear winner lah, because again the entry price right from the start was priced right already.
Yeah, so I think it's never like, okay, should I buy near or is it like I always buy far, it's better? It's really like, what is the gap that you should be paying? If let's say Park Colonial example, when the gap is so close, right, then okay, it makes a lot more sense to go for the one with MRT because it's going to be an easier exit. But let's say if today the gap is like 600-700k and then you're questioning like, okay, who exactly will be paying that premium of 600-700k when you can buy 2 cars? and maybe have extra funds left behind, right? Then that's where you have to kind of think a little bit more on whether that premium is worth the MRT or not.
Yes, correct.
Or whether the MRT is worth the premium or not.
Correct.
Okay, so the next thing we kind of ask ourselves is, with that same budget, if I can get a bigger unit type, that means with MRT, that price, if it's a 2 beta, if I go to somewhere further, I can get a 3 beta, which one would then perform better?
Yes.
And this is a perfect example of like Riverfront and Sengkang Grand, because they both launched at the similar time in 2018, 2019. And if I were to take 2019 as like an overlap for both projects, right? Because there were transactions in 2019. If you had a budget of about 1.3 to 1.4, Sengkang Grand was a lot more convenient. So naturally, your per square feet is going to come at a premium, and developers sold it for about 1,700 per square feet, which also meant that if you have a 1.3 plus 1.4 budget, you could only get a 2 beta, which is about 764.
Yep.
And with that same budget, if you say, okay, I don't mind something a bit more ulu, Riverfront developer had to price it cheap because they don't have an MRT to sell. Naturally, they can only move it by pricing. So 1.4, you can actually buy a 3 beta.
Yep.
And when you look at the outcome at the end of the day, let's say when you sell it in 2024, it doesn't mean that the integrated don't make. They still made about 300, let's say 100 plus to 200, even hitting 300. But Riverfront with that same amount, and they actually made close to 3 times more, around 6 to 700K. And the irony is that these people at Sengkang Grand didn't even enjoy the convenience because they exited upon TOP.
Yep.
If they stayed 10 years and say like, okay, make a little bit less, maybe it still makes sense. But if you're really from an investment perspective and you're planning to exit upon TOP, right, then it makes a lot more sense to buy something like Riverfront as compared to Sengkang Grand.
Yeah, this is like what they call paper convenience.
Yes, paper convenience.
Paper convenience. I got MRT, but I move in. I haven't even stayed inside. I sell already. Then what is that convenience for?
Correct.
Okay. Then we also have another example, Normanton Park, right? Again, comparing to One North Eden, which was just next to Buona Vista. Back then, with the budget of about 1.6 mil, I could have bought One North Eden. Same thing, because the per square foot was higher, I could only purchase a 2 beta, right? Comparing to Normanton Park back then with the similar budget, I could have bought into like a 3 beta at 1.7K per square feet. And then in terms of the profits wise, you can see One North Eden, we are seeing about 200 plus K profits. Not too bad, but then if I have a 3 beta at Normanton Park, again, my profit would be double lah, right? And then last example, we have Treasure at Tampines. This is 2 different areas, right? One at Tampines, Simei area, the other one at Paya Lebar area. Again, same quantum of about 1.4 million. I could have bought Park Place, near to MRT, so many malls coming up, PLQ Mall.
And bought in earlier some more. 2018 means they held longer, they should have made more, but actually they made like much lesser.
Correct. So for them, 1.4 mil, I bought a 2 beta. I exit in 7 or 6 years, I made about 100 over K to 200K. We look at Treasure at Tampines, I could have bought a 3 beta in 2019-2020. In 4 years, 5 years time, I would have exited with 500K profit.
Yep.
So again, sometimes that's why when we advise our clients, right, when you are looking at own stay or investment, I think this is something you want to look at. Because if your horizon is 4 years, you might not even get to enjoy the convenience of the MRT, and then you're paying a premium for it. Yeah. So that's why when we advise our clients, really we need to look at the next property very clearly. What is our lens lah? Is it own stay? Is it for investment?
Yeah. So a quick guideline, I guess, for you is that if you know today you're already looking around in the market and you're looking at, let's say, a 2 beta or 3 beta, maybe stretch your your location a bit further to see if that same budget, could you have gotten a bigger unit? If let's say no, right, then okay, go ahead with whatever you've picked. But let's say you have a bigger unit that's available, that could be a potential option that you can also consider. Yeah,
correct. Sometimes it's not about stretching your max budget. It's also wanting to position yourself for an easier exit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the last part we'll look at is what is the exact market acceptable premium that people actually pay for MRT. And what we kind of did was looking at similar age properties in the market that's available today, with and without MRT. What are the transaction prices to see how much exactly someone is willing to pay for the convenience. Yep. And the very first one we saw was the example just now, which is Riverfront and Sengkang Grand. And you would see for about a 3 beta premium at Riverfront, it's around the 1.95 million range, and Sengkang Grand, it's about the 2.2. So a gap you would see here is around 240,000.
Yeah. Okay. Next, we take a look at the other side, east side, which is at Pasir Ris. We have Siesta all the way over here. And then we have the Pallet, which is a walking distance to Pasir Ris, right? So the gap, PSF, in terms of PSF wise, we are looking at a gap of about 221. And then price gap wise is about 194. So close to 200K lah.
Yep.
All right.
And then the last example we will have is towards the west side, which is Normanton Park and One North Eden. One North Eden is closer to like Buona Vista MRT. Normanton Park is in the middle of nowhere, no man's land. There are 3-bedder over there. It's about 2.4 million. And at One North Eden is about 2.6. So the gap here is about 187,000. And you would see across the examples, actually, you can kind of have a sensing of how much people are willing to pay for, let's say, MRT. It would usually range from about 150 to 250 because there's an average of how much a car actually costs in Singapore.
Yes.
And that's usually how much people kind of price. So it gives you a good sensing. If today, you know, you are going to buy MRT and it costs you like 600K more, then maybe you want to reconsider your decision.
Yes.
But if today you can get with MRT at maybe just 100K more or like, let's say 150K, okay, fair enough.
Yes,
right?
fair enough.
Because you're enjoying the convenience and you know that in the market next time, someone is going to
willing to buy
over
more,
that 150K
Correct.
extra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, we have come to the end of our session today. We hope that we have given you a little bit of insights when you're looking at comparing MRT to non-MRT. I think ultimately what we want to say is MRT or not, ultimately we still need to take a look at the entry price.
Yes.
Right?
So if you watch this video and you're still not sure like exactly how much you should pay, just scan the QR code. I think every area it's also different. Like sometimes it's 150, sometimes it's 200. It also depends on your buyer profile. Are you in the OCR? Are you in the RCR? Because in certain regions, people value it slightly different from like other regions. So feel free to reach out to us and we'll be happy to share it specifically to your case also.
Yes, correct.
If not, we've come to the end of this myth-busting series. If you have other myth that you would like us to bust, feel free to just comment in the comment section and be happy to do an analysis on it. If not, we'll see you next time. This is Grace.
This is Zach.
Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.